Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tyndall. I'm a CPA with Dominion, where our firm's focus is working with advisors and helping them with their tax strategy and proactivity. But today's episode, we have Dr. Maribeth Kuzmeski. Did I get that right? And she is the president of Red Zone Marketing. It's a business growth consulting firm focused solely on the financial services industry. So she's going to have that niche knowledge for you. She's written 9 books on marketing and also is an associate professor of marketing at Oklahoma State. And today's episode is going to be all about how to attract more referrals from clients without asking, and from centers of influence by asking the right questions. So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So this is an excellent topic and something I'm always really interested in because it applies to, my practice as well. For people that are interested in starting to get more referrals from existing clients, and especially like your A clients, what would you say is kind of the first step or the way that you want to frame them thinking through, how they can begin, getting these referrals through not having to be pushy or salesy with it?
Yeah, I think that's the key, because we're not going to do it if we think we're going to be salesy. Just we don't feel comfortable. We don't want to do it. But I think to start off with, there's 3 major misconceptions, I think, about referrals. And one is that they just happen. It's like this miracle from the sky that they just come to us. And we're not doing anything. They just come to us. Not true. That's a misconception. We can talk about that. And that asking for referrals is too salesy, because there are certain ways to ask that aren't salesy. And then the final misconception is that referral acquisition is not a marketing strategy. It absolutely is a marketing strategy, even if you never ask. So those are the 3 things that I wanted just to start it with. But I think, to how do we get more unsolicited referrals? We have to earn them. We have to literally earn them. And so if you say, well, how does a financial advisor earn them? Well, I think you would say, well, it's probably through service, right? It's probably through just doing the right things and having a great client relationship. And one of the things that we've done a lot of surveys of financial advisors to ask them what's actually working in your marketing. And the number 1 strategy is always unsolicited referrals. And the other thing that I think is interesting about these surveys that we do is that what comes back is that the biggest differentiator with a financial advisor from others is their ability to create client relationships. That's their biggest differentiator. It's not financial planning. It's not their product selection. It's their ability to create client relationships. And the better those relationships are, the more we get referrals. But in order to get those referrals magically appear from the sky, your clients have to have a story to tell. And a lot of times people don't go around, if you're a big fan of a football team, I'm a big fan of the Packers. If you're a big fan of a football team, you always have a story. You didn't just randomly become a fan of the Green Bay Packers. There's a story. Mine is all about my grandmother. But if you're a financial advisor, you go, well, what story are my clients telling? Because they're typically not talking about a taboo subject, which is their money. Like they're not walking around going, oh, I've got all this money and this guy helped me get more money or whatever it is. But they do have to have a story to tell. And so it's how do we get them to tell a better story about us without ever asking? And that's one of the key things with unsolicited referrals.
So what would you say for people that are looking to upgrade that client experience? How should they be thinking about that in a way that's going to be, I guess the most practical for them to try to trigger this response from people?
Right.
Do you have suggestions there?
Yeah, I think that, if a financial advisor looks at their practice and say, do we really give deep service? And the answer with a lot of the advisors, especially we work with, yes, the answer is yes, we do deep service. We provide that. So I don't know that it's going back and looking at your service model. I think it's pulling the things out from your clients, asking questions like, what's the most important benefit you receive from our firm? Because if you ask that question, they will answer it. And it's probably, oh man, I didn't know I could buy a second home, or I retired early. Those kinds of things. Now you've put it into their head. Now you've reminded them, and they, now they've got something to talk about that's not the dollars and cents that they have. Or, what have you accomplished as a result of working with us? That's a good question too. These questions actually prompt them to remember the stories that they should be telling. So it's just one strategy, but it absolutely works for getting people to think about how to talk about about you without saying, here are the 10 things to say about my firm when you go talk to someone else. It's really letting them use their own words and remind them, because if you've been working with them for 10, 15 years, they may not remember. They may not be thinking about it. Get them to think about it. Get them to heighten the awareness of that powerful story that they have with you, because just about everybody has one. If you've worked with a financial advisor and they've had some impact on your life, there's a story to tell. They just don't think about maybe telling that story.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because I think for a lot of people, and this is especially true in my industry too, when we're in the weeds of doing the work, we like to think that it's the work is what people are noticing, but it's really more the transformation that the client is experiencing as a secondary effect from the work. And
Absolutely.
so being able to have that conversation with the client of, especially when you get new people in, right? Because that's probably where you want to start a lot in your sales process, of getting a really strong sense of what transformation is this person looking for, and how am I going to reverse engineer, like how we make the sausage of the work to get them that transformation, because it's the transformation, it's the story that they're going to take away from it. That's a really great way to frame that. And I guess maybe going into the second question, for people who aren't clients, but are centers of influence, that's probably a very different tactic, right? Because you're not providing them a transformation the same way. So how would you approach those kinds of relationships?
Yeah, so those kinds of relationships are different, because if you ask any financial advisor, hey, have you tried to get more centers of influence, more COIs? And they almost always say yes. And then how did that work? They almost always say it didn't. And so there's a couple questions, because I think what we think about with COIs is a little bit different than what we think about with clients. COIs are easy to find. They're all over the place. There are CPAs, divorce attorneys, estate planning attorneys, all different kinds of professionals that a financial advisor could make a good synergistic partnership with. But the problem is that you have to ask a couple of really good questions to see if it's going to work in the beginning. We've done a lot of research actually on this very topic, because we couldn't figure out why, if you're doing all these things right, if you're giving the CPA referrals, why aren't they giving them back to you? There's a reason for that. So what we found out is there's two main questions to ask. The first one is, as you are approaching a COI and you're starting to have some interaction with them, are you actively growing your business? Because if they're not actively growing their business, what we have found is that they do not become good referral partners. Because you're not going to sit down with somebody you've been doing their taxes for 20 years and say, oh, I think you need to see a new financial advisor. I just met with this guy for lunch last week. You should probably talk to him. Like, the conversation doesn't come up. But the second question is even more important, is where does your new business come from? Because for instance, a lot of CPAs can build their entire practices by getting referrals from financial advisors. And if they're building their business from financial advisors, they can't take something from one advisor and then say, oh, I think you really should work with this other advisor. That's not how it works. And although the CPA may want to give referrals and may really enjoy receiving them, they may likely, very likely, not be able to do it, because all of their new business is coming from your competitors as a financial advisor. So where does your new business come from? Typically, it's a partner in a law firm or a CPA firm that is young, that doesn't have this huge book of business that they've developed from financial advisors. It's those that are starting off and looking for these new relationships. And a lot of times that's the place to do it. But if somebody says most of my business comes from financial advisors, lunch is over. We're not going to get anything. They may tell you big, that they really want to do it, because I think they really do, but they won't, because they can't.
Yeah, that makes sense. And would you say for people where they're thinking about, okay, I'm doing the ad spend, or I'm doing these different, organic posting and things like that, and then, thinking about redoing their approach to trying to get more referrals, do you think, compared to other methods of marketing, like where do you think that asking for referrals and being able to really focus your interest on improving that as something that you're measuring and something that you're working with, how do you think that compares with the other methods of getting clients in terms of like ease of doing and worthwhileness?
Yeah, it's not even close. We've been doing this survey with an asset manager for a long time, years before COVID, through COVID, after COVID. And every single survey, when we ask financial advisors, and we survey thousands of them each time, we're actually in the middle of a survey period right now. When we ask them, where are you getting your new business from? What marketing strategy is delivering the most new business? The number one thing forever has been referrals without asking. That's the number one way that financial advisors bring in business. Social media doesn't even get close. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do social media and you shouldn't do email marketing and you shouldn't work on, mining LinkedIn and doing these kinds of things. But with the business, especially the higher net worth people, they're finding out about a financial advisor from someone they trust, which is family, friends, COIs. That's it. And by the way, the second way that financial advisors are bringing in new business is by asking for referrals from financial or from their clients and from COIs. Those are the two main ways, and nothing else is honestly even close. And again, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do those other strategies, because we want to build a good practice where we've got a lot of pillars and business coming in from different places, and we've got exposure out there. We're doing events, we're doing webinars, we're on social media. All of those things are great to help convert the referrals, actually. And so, but the referrals are still going to be that main number one source.
Yeah. And so I think for people, when they get tempted of, oh, well, maybe I just need to do a podcast, or maybe I just need to do, this or that, is the core advice that you would have for them is rethink how you're doing the referrals, have this be something that is, you're making structured improvements for how you're building out these conversations and these relationships so that you can get this behavior from people, psychologically. And it's going to feel like maybe a little awkward as you're trying to implement this, but that's going to be the highest return on your time in terms of actually moving your business forward and growth. Because a lot of these other things, like you said, they're nurturing. It's not going to drive traffic the same way as just growing your client base out of just those good referrals, and then having that targeted approach with the COIs. What would you, does that align with what you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We recommend that advisors, their number one after referral acquisition, which is not asking and asking. And there's a lot of strategies for actually asking that isn't like the salesy asking, but not asking and asking, meaning service and giving them some stories to tell, and bringing up the awareness of asking for referrals. Like, somebody says, hey, how's business? A lot of clients will ask that to a financial advisor and say, oh, actually, business is pretty good. Over the last month, we've gotten several introductions from some of our clients, and they've turned into new clients. We love that so much. It's been great. We're so grateful to have these new clients come into our practice. That kind of a conversation is not asking for referrals. It's raising the awareness that we actually really appreciate them. And they go, oh yeah, maybe I should refer business. Wow, I didn't know. But if that's a question that almost all financial advisors get from their clients that really care about them. How's business? Answering those questions in ways that heighten the awareness of how much you appreciate referrals is important. But after referrals, it's your website. You've got to have a website, because even if they're a referral, before they ever come in and see you, they're going to go to your website. And when they go to your website, they're going to either say to themselves, I'm at the right spot, this is a firm for me, or they're going to say, yeah, I don't know. And they put it off, because it's easier to put it off than to do something about it. And so the website is the most important thing. And then there's all the ancillary things that you can attach to your website, like a podcast, like doing webinars, like blogging, like social media. All of those things it comes from that core website, and it can branch out. And that's really what you want to do. And the branching out really does make a difference in terms of converting referrals, more so than attracting new clients that have never heard of you before until they listen to your podcast. That's less likely to happen.
Yeah. So it's more about that nurturing process. Yeah. Well, this is great. So I think to kind of wrap up the thought points here, kind of my main takeaway is involves a lot more strategic thinking than some quick tips. Right. And so I'd love to hear more about, for the advisors listening, what would you say is good next steps for them in terms of reaching out to you, or how do you think they should engage with this problem deeper, and how would you be part of that process?
Yeah, I have recorded a lot of videos. We have Red Zone Marketing has a YouTube channel. You can get there from our website, redzonemarketing.com. But we've got a lot of free resources. I just recorded a whole webinar on unsolicited referrals. And so I think there's a lot of free resources out there that advisors can access from my website. I do a lot of speaking in the industry. And of course, we do consulting and coaching. But I think to start off with, the best thing to do is look at some of the free resources we have with the videos and the webinars and things like that. And that all can be found by looking for redzonemarketing.com and then going to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, great. And so wherever you're listening to this, that link will be nearby. So thank you again, Maribeth, for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and your insights here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This has been great.